Every school has stories. Someone has invented everything, and someone has a part of the truth. The Big Brain School also had a story in which almost everything was true. Once it was not a school at all, but a residential building. The house had 5 floors. By the way, we had 4 at school. A rich lady lived there. No one else lived in the house except her. One day, her 12-year-old niece, Rosie, came to the lady for a week. Rosie liked the 5th floor the most. Large, spacious rooms, soft carpets, wonderful furniture. So Rosie chose the 5th floor for living. She went to bed. She had a strange dream. She's lying on the bed. The bed floats in a white void. There is emptiness at the bottom, emptiness at the top. Then the bed starts shaking. She's shaking harder and harder, and then she abruptly turns over and Rosie falls into a white void. Suddenly, red spots began to appear around Rosie, as if someone had dropped red ink on a sheet of blank paper. Below, Rosie sees red spikes. She screams and falls on these spikes. These dreams were dreamed by the girl for 5 days. She tried to tell her aunt everything, but she blamed everything on nightmares. On the 6th day, Rosie did not dream anything. She was sleeping peacefully, but a strange whisper woke her up. He was quiet and not picky. Then Rosie noticed that the room had changed. All the furniture disappeared, the walls turned from pink to white. There were no windows and doors. Rosie screamed, but a wheeze escaped from her throat. She fell to the floor. Then something appeared on the wall and disappeared at the same moment. Rosie peered at the wall. People began to flash on it, and although they flashed very quickly, Rosie saw them very well. They were people with terrible injuries. The girl is lying, her mouth and eyes are sewn together. The boy without hands and without a nose is lying in a pool of blood. The girl is leaning against the wall. Her stomach is open. One eye is cut out. There are no lips. Rosie could not see it. She started banging her head against the wall. It was unbearably painful for her. She screamed, but did not stop. Aunt woke up from a distant noise on the 5th floor. She ran there. Here is the 4th floor. Here is the corridor, and there should be a staircase. There should be. There are no stairs, and there is no 5th floor. After that, the lady moved out of this house, and Rosie was never seen again. Jenny, too, Alice, Sam, and Mitch didn't believe this story. Stories for kids, horror stories for snotties, lies on a plate. That's what 5 friends called this story. One day they decided to play hide-and-seek on the 4th floor. It felt to Sam to drive. He began to count slowly. The guys, giggling, ran to the place they had noticed for a long time. At the end of the corridor, behind large silk curtains. Now Sam has finished counting. His friends heard his footsteps in the corridor. He looked into the toilets, checked the plants, walked around the empty classrooms. The guys ate and held back from laughing. Q couldn't hold back any longer. She giggled. Everyone shushed her. But it was too late. Sam heard and shouted, "Aha!" Alice emerged from under the curtain and saw a white staircase straight up in front of her. She whispered, "Guys, come here quickly." Everyone rushed up. Only Jenny remembered that there had been no stairs before, but there was no time to think about it, and the crowd carried her up. They'd all crowded into the 5th floor. The door slammed shut behind them. Only now they realized where they were. The guys looked at each other in fear. It was Mitchie who came to his senses first. "What happened? Are you blind?" Alice pounced on him. "We got to a floor that doesn't exist." "Why are you yelling at me?" In turn, Mitchie shouted at Alice. Jenny, who was the calmer and wiser of the company, hastened to intervene in the dispute. "Stop it. Calm down. Let's take a look around." "I totally agree. Q said. And it seems to me you just need to open the door, said Alice, who always considered herself right, and haughtily pushed the door. Zero effect. Mitchie laughed. Alice glared at him angrily, but then Q spoke up. I think Jenny's right. Let's split up and see what kind of place it is. She looked back at Jenny. She smiled encouragingly, and T continued a little more confidently. I'll go with Jenny to the left, and you go to the right. Alice and Mitchie reluctantly agreed, and everyone scattered around the floor. Jenny and Q saw the room and entered it. The room is like a room, only empty and lifeless, with white walls, ceiling, and floor. There is not a single window. Q felt uneasy. Everything was too calm, but it wasn't for long. The door they entered slammed shut. Jenny shuddered. She looked first at Q, then at the door, and threw herself at it with all her might. The door was as strong as before. Then suddenly a girl of about 12 appeared in the middle of the room. She was floating in the air. She was wearing a white nightgown with red blood spots. She had long red hair, thin, long lips stained with blood, red eyes. Blood, blood, I want blood. Suddenly she shouted. A long needle appeared in her hand. She stuck it into her arm, then pulled the needle out, flew up to Q, and stuck the needle right into her side. Q screamed in pain. A drop of her blood hit the door, and it opened. Jenny rushed to Q, picked her up, and ran with her out of this room. They heard the killer girl's laughter for a long time. Finally, Jenny stopped and laid T on the floor. Are you in pain? IDS, very. Barely audibly answered T. Everything will be fine, Jenny was saying. Calm down, everything will be fine. She tore off a piece of her school dress, and repeating everything will be fine, began to wrap it around Key's wound. And, no, you don't understand. Her blood is poison. Nothing can be done. Large tears rolled from Key's eyes. She let out a dying moan. Goodbye. Alice and Mitchie were walking down the corridor. It was quiet, friends, resentfully silent. Then a door appeared out of nowhere in front of them. Mitchie pushed her. They entered. A white room with a window. Look, window, window. Mitchie shouted happily. I see, Alice shouted, but only out of habit. In fact, she was ready to kiss Mitchie. They rushed to open the window. When they opened it, they didn't see the usual schoolyard, just a white void. Then it seemed to the guys as if someone pushed them. They flew down like a stone. They found themselves in the same room with the same window. The children looked at each other with big eyes of fear and rushed out of this window. And again, we were in the same room. But there was a change. Sam was sitting in the corner. Alice and Mitchie exclaimed in unison. Guys, Sam was delighted. After they hugged, Mitchie asked, How did you get here? The smile slipped from Sam's face and was replaced by fright, and he began in a trembling voice. I heard you and went in the sound, but I didn't find you. But I saw the stairs to the 5th floor. I hesitated, to go, not to go. But then something pulled me up. I went up the stairs as if enchanted. When I got there, the door slammed shut and I woke up. I was scared, but there was nothing to do, and I went down the corridor. Saw the room, entered. A real white box. The door disappeared. Then a girl appeared in the air in the middle of the room. Well, so, dead, redhead, in a white nightgown. She came up to me, and there was nowhere to run. She took my hand. Her hand is like a piece of iron. Whispered in my ear, We'll meet again. And I started to fall, fell here, all. Yeah, Sam, Alice said. She wanted to add something else, but her gaze accidentally fell into the corner and she screamed, "Look, there's blood." And indeed, blood began to flow out of the corner. It felt cold. She appeared in the middle of the room, a girl in a white nightgown, with red hair, red eyes, and bloody lips. In her hand was a shiny, sharp knife. "I told you we'd meet," she smiled at Sam. He couldn't move. He looked at her and couldn't do anything. She slowly began to cut off his fingers. The guys wanted to help a friend. They wanted to tear the nasty girl apart. She seemed to sense the children's thoughts, turned her head to them with a nasty smile, and whispered with her lips, "Don't you dare." The children froze, and Sam was wheezing with pain. There were tears in his eyes. There was nothing he could do. Then the girl cut off his head. Finally, she smiled at the children and disappeared. The children looked at each other and without a word rushed to the door that had just appeared. They found themselves in a corridor. They ran along it until they were completely out of breath. Worried, Jenny was kneeling in front of them. But who is lying in front of her, and why is she crying? Alice and Mitchie took a closer look. "Nuru!" they shouted. Q was lying on the floor in a pool of fresh blood. Then Mitchie saw the door. He didn't know if the door would open, but he felt it. He shouted, "Door, door, let's go quickly." "Yes," Alice picked up. "Come on, Jenny." "I'm not leaving Q," she whispered. "You can't help her," Alice shouted through her tears. "Yes, Jenny," Mitchie shouted, holding on. He and Alice picked up Jenny and dragged her to the door. The door opened. They rolled down the stairs. Jenny caught a glimpse of the ghost girl. Next to her on the wall was written Rosie. The latter disappeared. It's been 10 years. Alice and Mitchie got married and had a girl and a boy. They named the boy Sam, and the girl Key. Jenny also married Deuce, Alice's brother. They live happily, but they still remember this story with fear and bitterness.